Hello, welcome to our webinar today. Today we would like to discuss with you a new way of messaging in the biologic biosimilar competitive situation. Today we're going to talk about three things. First, what is counter-biosimilar messaging? Second is how to conduct such messaging research. We're going to illustrate this with a case study. And finally, how does this apply to your brand? So as we all know, the branded biologics are facing intense competition from biosimilars. Actually, the global market of biosimilars is expected to reach $2 billion within the next 3 years. And in the US, FDA is actually expected to reach 2 decisions in Q1 this year. So the question is, as a biologic brand, what should you do differently? So generally speaking, we see three defense strategies. First, you can change the paradigm of your treatment, or you can establish a new formulation as the standard of care. And second, it increases the spending on promotion as well as messaging. And the third one, you can focus on your PR strategy. You can use contracting for preferred status at the financial level. So the counter-biosimilar messaging we're going to talk about today fits perfectly on the second strategy, which is about promotion and messaging. So what is counter-biosimilar messaging anyway? To get a good understanding of this, let's first look at what traditional messaging is, because counter-biosimilar messaging is just quite the opposite. If you look at the right-hand side of this chart, these are the emotions for traditional messages, such as acceptance and commitment. The purpose of traditional messaging is to appeal to these emotions in order to drive adoption. For example, talk to your doctor about product X, or ask your doctor for product X. So as you can see, it's a call to action. However, the counter-biosimilar messaging is to justify the emotions on the left-hand side of this chart, such as resistance and doubt. So the purpose, in other words, is actually a call to inaction. So why do we want to appeal to the other side of the emotions? Well, facing a new competition is nothing new, but we think the biosimilar competition is a more disruptive force, which we believe requires a fresh look at the way we message it. So let's first look at what we can learn from our past experience from CPG or other industries. So do they face similar challenges? Well, the answer is yes and no. Yes, because yes is similar because it is also about customer retention. However, there are significant differences. Let's first look at the similarities. If I can use the Breyer ice cream as example, and this is, as you can see from the screen, this is their legacy product, the Breyer Black Pack ice cream. So there has been category shrinking in recent years with more disruptive substitution from frozen yogurt or gelato. And one of the strategies we have seen in customer retention from a messaging perspective is to appeal to the brand legacy and brand heritage of Breyers. As you can see, their sticker on the pack says quality since 1866. In fact, there is a group of customers who are taste and heritage seekers. Another example I can give you in the CPG case is the ragu pasta sauce. In that case, what we found out is the processing system of their pasta sauce, which has been fine-tuned over many and many years, is actually a very important differentiator in terms of customer retention. So as you can see, the commonality here is leveraging the long history of the brand. So in order to appeal to their to the heritage and the legacy. However, there are three major differences in the counter-biosimilar situation. The first one is the goal is different. In the counter-biosimilar case, the goal is actually to delay the uptake of biosimilars and buy time for the next generation product replacement. Whereas in the CPG case, the goal is actually to maintain the product share. The second major difference is, this is what I call, there is a dominant choice. If you think about this, in the counter-biosimilar case, switching to a lower cost biosimilar seems to be a dominant choice from health economics perspective because it saves the overall healthcare costs. However, there isn't such case in the CPG case. You are not obligated to buy frozen yogurt versus gelato or ice cream. So it is a much tougher uphill battle for the branded biologics. And the third difference is the impact of the switching decisions. You can go to a grocery store, buy a different ice cream or frozen yogurt or gelato every day, every week. However, in the counter-biosimilar situation, once patients are switched to the biosimilar, that switching decision is likely to be permanent. It's very hard to have them switch back once they are tolerating with the product. And the other side of this is the risk as well as the deliberation in that switching decision are much more different for the for either patient or physician in the switching decision to biosimilars. So with the goal and the unique aspects in mind, what we feel like is the traditional messaging falls short in this situation, and the counter-biosimilar messaging, which is about justify the emotions of resistance and doubt, the call to inaction messaging will work better in this situation. Because the goal of counter-biosimilar messaging is to increase inertia or inaction. If you look at the message, it has two goals. As I mentioned earlier, the first, we would like to shift the adoption curve of the biosimilars so we can delay the uptake of it for as long as possible. And second, it gives the brand more time for introducing their next generation replacement, give them more time to transition patients to their new generation replacement. From a research perspective, the two goals are, we need first identify the messages that create an inertia or inaction, and the second is we'll be able to measure the impact of such inertia or inaction. So hopefully by now you have a pretty good understanding of what counter-biosimilar messaging is. The next, we're going to use a case study to show how to conduct such messaging research. And this case study is actually based on the message platform. I just want to give you guys some background on the message platform. A message platform is if you can imagine, it's a master document of all the communications and the messages. So it has a lot more information than your traditional product claims. So that's the message format we were working with this case study. So there are 3 steps involved in this case study. First is qualitatively explore the message themes and emotions. And second is to quantify the message preferences as well as impact. And third is to identify the message drivers as well as the message combination. So first step, we first need to explore the different message themes and directions as well as the emotions attached in the counter-biosimilar situation. For example, we need to find out what does generics mean to physicians and to patients, and what the biosimilars means to them, and what does interchangeability mean to them. So, what we want to get out of this is what kind of themes, generally speaking, resonate with them and what the same that don't. So with this information, we'll be able to work together with the agency to create the messages. So we may need a number of iterations in this process to get to the point with, get some feedback from the respondent, and then you go to iterative approach and get some more feedback and refine your messages. So we get to the final messages as well as those prioritization of the messages for the quantification. At this step, we use a hybrid qual approach. A hybrid qual is basically it's a qualitative interviews, but we have incorporated the quantitative elements such as MaxDiff, conjoint, or the interactive ranking and sorting tool. As I mentioned earlier, this case is based on the message platform, which contains a lot more information. As you can imagine, if you have 8 to 10 different message platforms, and each message platform has anywhere between 80 to 100 words. So that's quite a lot of information for the respondent to process, especially your interview with patients. So with those hybrid quantitative elements, you can actually program and get the results on the fly while you're interviewing with your stakeholders, which the main benefit is it keeps the respondents engaged. It also, because it also gives you the results on the fly, which allows you to probe more dynamically, which also gives you the benefits of personalized engagement, which is very crucial in this case. Once we have the qualitative results, or we have the final messages, we move to the second step. This is the quantification step. Here we use a trade-off exercise, such as MaxDiff or conjoint, to get to the message preferences. At this step, we define a primary matrix as well as secondary matrix. For the primary matrix, for example, hesitation, as we mentioned earlier. For example, how hesitant are you to prescribe biosimilars? So based on this primary matrix, we'll be able to use the trade-off exercise such as MaxDiff to get to the winning message. But as we all know, the MaxDiff or conjoint will usually give us a relative score or preference of the messages. So it's important for us to get some absolute measurement on this message as well, which we define as the supporting metrics or secondary metrics, such as being credible and being reliable or being believable. So by combining the primary and the secondary metrics, which we help us to further isolate and identify the winning messages. So the third step is dive into the winning messages as well as the messages that do not resonate well to identify the drivers in order to further optimize the messages as well as to create a message combination. So to identify the message drivers, we use a clickable exercise. A clickable exercise allows you to dissect your message platform into different parts or sentences where the respondents can click on the part of the sentence they resonate versus the part they don't. And the left side chart on the slide is the output for such exercise. As you can see, in this case, you certainly do not want part 1 in your message platform. However, part 3 and part 4 are the drivers of such message platform. So with this information, you can further optimize your message platform. And in order to, we use turf analysis to identify the message combo. So turf analysis is a pretty good way to answer the question of how many messages do you need in your communication. As we showed earlier, step, we identify the winning messages, but the question is, are we going to the market with one message, or are we going to the market with multiple messages? And how many messages do we need? So that's what the turf analysis can help us to answer. The way to do it is you start with your winning message, and then you add additional message to see how much lift or how much reach that additional message will get you. As you add additional messages, you either reach a predefined threshold in terms of reach, or you can reach a diminishing point where additional message does not give you too much value, and the downside of more messages, it creates more confusion in your communication. So these are the 3 steps involved in this case study. And I think the next question you may ask is, does such a messaging work? Well, to answer that question, we first need to think about how we're going to measure the message success. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mike.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, so how would you measure success with your new call to inaction messaging? Well, you probably should only focus on a few critical touch points. For instance, in our recent study we had with a client, we had 2 critical metrics that they needed us to look at. And the first metric was the impact of each message. So we tested the impact on healthcare professionals and on patients. And the second metric that was of great interest to them was the average wait time before adopting a biosimilar. And so the questions were kind of revolved around those 2 particular metrics. So the first one is clear. The impact on the message, in this case, the impact of the message on was to increase the size of the non-prescriber cohort by twice. So twice as many people fell into the non-prescriber cohort after they saw the winning message. The second one was about hesitation time. So what our client wanted to do was to have a message that was most likely going to cause physicians and patients to wait longer before they were willing to adopt a biosimilar. And in this case, the winning message increased the average wait time by 25%. So what does 25% mean for that client? Well, it means a 3 or 4 month delay. And that can have a huge financial impact for a branded product that has reached the end of its patent life, and at this point is generating pretty strong revenues, net revenues. So that was really important. These are 2 great metrics for them. But you might have other metrics that are critical for you. The overall framework, though, is that you should flip your thinking about the metric endpoints, because in this case you can see they wanted to increase the non-prescribers. That's pretty different. And in this case they wanted to increase the time that people would not move to a new product. Again, not the way you would normally think about adopting a new product introduction, for instance. So this was flipping the thinking about the metric endpoints compared to the metrics you traditionally use. So we showed you 2, but really there are a number that we've used with different clients. So the one I just said, not prescribing, is certainly almost always critical. The idea of waiting longer before a new drug is introduced, as Alex mentioned earlier, that is an important part of their strategy because they're getting ready to introduce a new product. So they want to just buy a little time, basically. A third would be risk of switching. So if you can increase the awareness or perception of risk for switching, that is also going to add to the length of time you have your product in place. And hesitation. So the issue there was, what's the likelihood that they will hesitate before prescribing your product or before a patient will take your product? So the question was hesitation. Another one was, why didn't the message cause you to hesitate? So this was the downside of, so we gave you a message, we thought it was going to make you hesitate, it didn't, why not? So again, that's important to know so you can craft a better message. And then another one is credibility and believability. As Alex said, we certainly measure those. We measure those in any message test we're doing, basically. But it's really important here to assess how the message is affecting your brand's credibility and believability. And another one is to reduce the size of the early adopter cohort. So again, you're trying to say, we don't want early adopters of that, so how can we dissuade them from being early adopters? And then, as I mentioned earlier, the size of the non-prescriber cohort is really important as well. So the metrics that you choose should be specific to your needs. However, the base case of flipping your thinking is a great way of a great exercise to help you look at your messaging and communication challenges differently. But overall, what matters? Perspective matters. Flipping the metrics, that matters. But it changes the conversation. It changes how you talk to physicians. It changes how you talk to patients. And at the end of the day, regardless of the metrics you choose, the important issue is that when you're facing a disruptive new competitor, you need to change your perspective in order to change your thinking. And that was the big aha for us when we started down this road about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago now, in assessing counter-biosimilars and counter-generics, and that's sort of opposite of what we usually think about messaging. So overall, in summary, what we found is the change in your perspective is critical. And it's really got 3 parts. First of all, understand your goals. Launch and end patent strategies are different. Unlike traditional messaging, counter-biosimilar messaging is about creating inertia, delaying adoption, that sort of thing. As we are changing the context, things that are not suitable to support uptake at launch may become essential to create inertia. Things like what's the impact of your manufacturing process? Can that help you dissuade people from moving? Complex molecule structure, what is that? How's the impact on that? Patient assistance programs. And as I say, of course, your measurements of success and metrics change. Number 2, the decision influencing power of stakeholders may shift. And what we mean by that is that you have to think about your relationship dynamics and the types of messages that work with your 4 primary stakeholders: physicians, nurses, patients, and players. We find that understanding the decision influence model for these new brands, and then as the brands move through their life cycle, is very important to understand how to communicate and message to the changing influence of power. And then number 3 and last, the bigger picture. How does counter-biosimilar messaging connect to your brand's overall strategy and probably to your portfolio strategy, because it's not in a vacuum and it has to relate to both the current product and new products that you're going to introduce. And that can be a tricky balance, and you have to pay close attention to it and make sure that you've got it right so that you're not offending anybody along the way. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll take any questions now.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't asked your question yet, please go ahead and put it in. I think we only have time for 1 question. So I'm going to go ahead and read that one out. What are some messaging strategies you have seen used for protecting brand originators or branded originators against biosimilars?
Okay, I can take that one, Abby. So I think as Mike mentioned earlier, the key here is changing perspective. As you change the perspective, you can change your conversation. So some of the strategies, the messaging strategy we have seen is actually centered around the changing of the conversation. Because you got to think about at launch, your major competitor is probably another branded biologics, but at LOE, your major competitor now can be the biosimilars. So some of the strategies you may want to consider, for example, are the complexity of your product, which is not something you would like to discuss or pay a lot of attention or have a lot of weight on when you launch the product. The other thing is probably you can talk about the manufacturing process, which is proprietary manufacturing process. Again, this is not something you may want to discuss at launch. And the third thing we have seen is probably around the patient assistance and patient support program. So again, I think if you look at this, all these three sort of examples I just gave you, the commonality is some of the things you want to discuss now is really about changing your perspective, so your conversation will be changed so that you'll be focused more on your major competitor now, which is a biosimilar. So I think another thing you may want to consider is actually stage the messages as biosimilar entered the market. So what are the messages you can talk about pre-biosimilar launch versus what kind of message you can use after launch. So you'll be able to have different conversations centered around or planned around the different stage of biosimilar launch. I hope that answered the question.
I hope so as well. I think that you've shared a lot of different strategies about how they can deal with this. So maybe, Alex, if you could just switch to that last slide. If you guys still have questions about this or about anything in the presentation, I would really encourage you to reach out to Alex or Mike. They'd be happy to answer your questions. And I think we're going to close out now. I want to thank you all for joining us for our webinar today. I'll be sending the slides and a recording of today's session around to you tomorrow morning. So please feel free to share it once you receive it, and also visit skimgroup.com/webinars to sign up for updates on our monthly webinars. We have one webinar at the end of each month, so we'll have a lot more of it coming there for you. So on behalf of Alex and Mike and myself, I thank you once again, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great day.